So this tier list is about how I value the design of each Elite-Spec. So how well is the Elite-Spec fitting to the class? So if the core class is Mesmer, how well is Mirage fitting to Mesmer? Is it feeling Mesmery, but is it still feeling as a new, unique thing? For me, it's really, I like to play classes that have a new twist on the class, but still feel like it's fitting to the class. So it's a nice, important mixture of both. And for me, it's really important that the design makes sense. So if the design is boring and it's just adding a button that is not really influencing the gameplay from my previous class, just adding a new button, that makes the class feel boring to me. I think fun is for me always something that is combined with how well the class is designed. You can make an argument that this is distinct from each other. It's not always the same. So you can have a fun class that is not well designed. Yes, you can make an argument, but for me, a class that is well designed is almost always fun as well. So let's go about this tier list, and I will rate every single Elite-Spec. So I will not rate the core spec, because the core spec, in my opinion, is really subjective. Yeah. So if you're an engineer enjoyer, you might like engineer. You can't say engineer from a design perspective is horrible, because it might just be your personal preference. When it comes to how well a class or an engineer Elite-Spec fits to engineer, that is something different, and I think this is a little bit more objectively rateable. But it's, as always, this tier list is of course subjective. I can't make a completely objective fun tier list. That would be horrible. So please take that with a grain of salt, of course. Then of course, S tier to D tier makes a lot of sense. I just leave it like it is. So let's start with some spicy things. Let's start with some warrior. So I think Spellbreaker for me is a really cool design. Yeah, I think I really like the idea of having a class that can just give you the feeling of being still a warrior, but gives you the feeling of interrupting enemy spells just because you don't use magic, you want to interrupt their magic. I think this is a really cool design. It just adds one button, but it's still a very fun spec. I think because it's only adding one button and it is really annoying to play against, and it's not really that much counterplay that you can have, I'm not a particularly, I wouldn't say it's the most fun warrior spec. Maybe it is. I don't know, it's hard to tell. Yeah, maybe it is the most fun spec to play. But for me personally, I think it's just adding one button. It's not completely changing the class. It's still feeling warrior. So I would say A or S tier. Both could be fine. I will for now put it probably in A tier, just because I think it's a really fitting warrior spec. Let's talk about Bladezone. I think Bladezone for me, that's just my personal preference, but I think Bladezone for me is a little bit less fun than Spellbreaker, because you are rooted in place, it's not as mobile. However, the class design is actually really good for anime role-playing fans. I personally don't like it as much as as the next one coming up, Berserker, but I still think it is a very decent spec. For me, Bladezone is, however, not as high as Spellbreaker, so I would put it in B tier, just because I'm not the type of player that wants to be rooted in place. I want to have something really fast-paced, and I think this is just my personal preference. I can see why it fits Warrior, but in my opinion, it's just not as fun. And then we have Berserker, which is, in my opinion, the best spec of those three. I would put it in S tier. The reason for that is, it is fast-paced, it is very close to Warrior, but still alters Warrior in a sense that is something new, something unique. It's really nice. It's just my take, of course. Let me know your take in the comments and the chat. I'm really interested in this as well. It's just my take on the matter. Yeah. And other than that, let's go, I guess, to the next medium on heavy armor spec rather. So let's talk about Guardian. So Guardian for me, let's start with Dragon Hunter. I think Dragon Hunter is the worst Guardian spec from a design perspective. I think Dragon Hunter for me feels very boring. It just adds some cast time on your virtues. It's not really that interesting. The block is nice, but other than that, it's not crazy. And the traps are not that crazy good either. So I think for me, Dragon Hunter is C tier. I'm not the biggest Dragon Hunter fan. It feels like a core Guardian with almost no addition. And it's not really Guardian feeling, in my opinion. Sadly, also, with Longbow, it was actually quite nice, but now every Guardian spec can use Longbow, so it's not that much of a difference anymore. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. Just my take. Then we have Firebrand. I think Firebrand is amazing. Firebrand is a really cool spec. It has with the tomes. It's really interesting. It feels really unique. It's a really cool spec. For me, Firebrand is S tier. I think it fits perfectly to Guardian with the tomes, and it has so much of a nice design that you have all the utility in your kit. It's extremely cool, and you feel like it's very skilled, and I don't know. I think it's a very good thing. I agree on Berserker, but sometimes the gameplay seems to revolve into use normal skill, use F skill. I mean, that's the rotation, yes. You use some weapon skills, use F skill, and then it's the rotation. And it feels like spamming. Yeah, I get it. But I think it's fast-paced, and it feels like a Berserk. You know, it feels exactly like the name suggests. You spam your buttons because you go Berserk. You're in your Berserk form and you spam it. It might not fit everyone, but I personally like a playstyle where you fit really those Berserk playstyle. I think the concept makes a lot of sense. But I get why people would say it's not for me. I don't, like I said, this Tierlist is my subjective take on the matter. It's not, I can't say this is the one that you should take because sometimes you don't enjoy it that much. Sure, I get that. So like I said, Firebrand is really cool. I think it's a little bit power crept in some circumstances, especially in PvE. It can be a little bit slow with the Condi DPS and that kind of stuff if you don't know what you're doing, especially. But I think I'm just talking about how the design is, and I think it's a really good design. It's not a very good design when it comes to how to balance it, because it's either broken or it's completely useless. But when it comes to the design of the class, how it looks and how it fits Guardian, I think it's really good. Then we have Willbender. I think Willbender is really interesting, because Willbender feels like a blue thief. And that's actually not a joke or something in the community meme. I think it's completely fitting. Yeah. I think Willbender, in my opinion, is very fitting to Guardian still, but it loses the support element. So it feels like an assassin that used a light assassin or something. And it's a new take on Guardian without altering too much. So I think it's also S tier for me. Yeah, which is one of the rare EOD specs, I can spoiler you on this, that I put in S tier, because I think EOD specs are mostly not there. I think the best specs were in Heart of Thorns and some in PoF, but in EOD, most specs are actually not S tier for me because they are not that interesting. I would really like to love Berserker, but a lot of encounters, there are split phases or mechanics to deal, and that leads up to drop out of Berserker. Yeah, I think it has some issues when it comes to how do you play it. I think they designed it in a way nowadays that you have to completely stay in Berserk form all the time, which in the end leads to feeling really bad if you have to drop out because of split phases, because of just some random encounters and mechanics. So I think the design decision to not be always in Berserk mode would have been the better choice, to make it more attractive to play in phases and mechanics and stuff, because then it would be part of your rotation to not be in Berserk form. But now it's, if you drop out, you completely deal almost no damage anymore. So it feels a little bit bad in that situation. I totally agree. But I think just the general roleplay of the class and how it feels, how it just fits, is really good. So I would still leave it like that. But I would agree it could have been even better. Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's get to Revenant. So Revenant, we have Renegade. I'm not the biggest Renegade fan. I think the spirits and that kind of stuff is not that crazy good. I have to say, I think Renegade is the worst Revenant Elite-Spec from the design perspective. I don't like the F skills too much, and I have to be honest, the spirits are not that crazy good either. The shortbow was cool, but nowadays, like I said, with the weapon proficiencies, weapons are used on every class, so it's not really interesting anymore. For me, it's a B tier. I'm not the biggest Renegade fan. I think it's too... It feels too similar like a core Revenant with some new buttons that not change too much. On the opposite, we have Herald. I think Herald is for me an S tier. Easy S tier. It is so nice with the change of the upkeeps and the glints and utility, and also the facet of nature. It's so cool. I think it's not too much of a difference, but it feels really nice. You have a buff thing. You can play really just selfish as well. I think it's a perfect spec in that sense. I think for me, definitely S tier as well. There are a lot of different things that I would say are fitting on Revenant in general, but I would say Herald is the best Revenant spec. Thanks, by the way. Thanks a lot for the Prime sub, Varens. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. Okay, so that's what I have to say about Herald. When it comes to Vindicator, the idea, the design of playing like a Dragoon is really cool. Just jump up high in the air and making some kind of dodge alteration. But how it in the end turns out, how you play it, like a DPS or a healer that just dodges all the time to deal damage or heal, feels like a little bit boring. Yeah. So in the end, the idea is really good, and I really like the class mechanic with the swapping your legends, so that you have, so to say, 3 legends if you use the alliance stance. Is really cool. I really like that. But in the end, I think the idea of the Vindicator is, with the dodge alteration after the nerfs to it, felt a little bit worse. So I'm not the biggest fan anymore. I would put it in high A tier because of that. Because of the dodge alteration that is not that impactful anymore. I think it was really cool if you had a class that had some really big impact skill, like boon extension on it, and it would be really nice to make it as a support like that. But just having a barrier heal on dodge feels like it's just boring. It's not really changing too much. It feels like you dodge and you heal because of that. Every Guardian can do that. I don't know. It's not too interesting for me. I'm more of a Herald fan from the design perspective. Okay. Then let's talk about the light armor classes next. So let's start with Mesmer. I like Mesmer. Yeah. So Mesmer is for me my favorite class probably. Just baseline because I like it. It's very unique. And one of the unique features of Mesmer is that it has a lot of instant casts. So that's why I would put Virtuoso, which doesn't have that anymore, in B tier. No, maybe A tier. A tier. Because I think it loses the instant cast, it loses the design perspective of, for me, the fun of this is to use it all the time, very fast if you have some in action. The shatters or the blade songs of Virtuoso are not that fast paced anymore, so they are a little bit slower. Yeah. So the class fantasy is a little bit lost there. I get it, it's fun to have the daggers don't have clones anymore. I think that makes sense. I get it, it's really cool. But just from a design perspective, especially when it comes to the traits, I think the traits are really boring. They could have made so much more interesting traits. But that's another topic. So I would put it in A tier because of that. Yeah, I think Mesmer is really cool. Just baseline because it's really unique. Not a lot of... I think almost no game actually has Mesmer as a class. And I think that's really cool that Guild Wars 2 has. Of course, Guild Wars 1 has, but other games don't. So, Chronomancer for me, S tier. Easy S tier. I think the idea of having a button that alters the complete gameplay of every single other button is immense. It's so cool to have a different class that is only getting one more button, but this changes how you play everything that you already selected. Is really cool. Of course, then you also have the Chrono Phantasma trait that I really like. I think this is a really cool trait because it helps a lot with just general interestingness of the class. And of course, you have all the alacrity and quickness stuff. I think it's a really cool class. And I like the Vel ideas because Vels deal stuff at the end. So you can go back and get value from them because of your continuous shift and they have a delay. It's really nice. I think it's perfect design. For me, easy S tier. Then we have Mirage. So Mirage is really hard. So if I would be a balancing team leader, Mirage to balance is really hard. Because dealing damage with your dodge is just... altering your dodge is a really bad thing for balance. However, I really like Mirage. I think Mirage is a fun Elite-Spec from the design. It's really fitting for Mesmer. It's so, yeah, evasive. I really like it. I think it's a really cool design. Is it as good as the classes in S tier? I would say no. For me, it's A tier, high A tier. But I would say definitely it's a cool class, for sure. I really like it. I like the design. I love to play this fast-paced Mirage gameplay. It's really challenging and a high level to do so, but it's a really cool class. Maybe you could make an argument to put it in S tier. Maybe. Let's leave it at S for now, because I'm just such a Mesmer sim. But... you could also put it in A tier because it's not as good as Chronomancer, that much is for sure. Okay, and let's talk about Necromancer. Necromancer, Reaper, easy S tier. Reaper is such, I mean, it might be the best class ever designed from Guild Wars 2. I think it's so good. It is amazing when it comes to how perfect fit it is. It looks cool, the animations are crazy good, the playstyle is perfectly fitting. You're such a crazy good damage dealer that can deal condition damage or power damage. It's really fitting for either way, and I don't know. I think it's best class they ever did, I would say. Also, the Greatsword edition with it fits perfectly. The shouts are also amazing, not animation-wise only, because they are also really cool from what you can use. The chill is amazing. I think it's perfect Elite-Spec. It's really good, really well-fitting. And it's way better than Core Necromancer. It's just an upgrade. It looks way better. It just feels perfect, in my opinion. Then we have Scourge. I think Scourge is really interesting as well. It has the ability to give you some barrier, and it uses sand shrouds and that kind of stuff, so I think it's okay. It feels a little bit less like a Necromancer. It feels more like some kind of Shaman or something, in my opinion. It's not like a typical Necromancer anymore from the baseline skills that it gets. But for me, it's okay. I would say from a design perspective, I would put it in B tier, actually. I think it's not the craziest design perspective class. And the same actually has to be said about Harbinger. I think Harbinger is cool that you lose the Death Shroud and you get still access to it, but it doesn't provide you with a second life pool. I think this is a really cool design decision. And I like the fast-paced gameplay, but I think the utility skills are really boring. Yeah, I think the utility skills of Harbinger are just elixirs. You just throw them around and that's it. I think this really keeps it down for me. Otherwise, I think it's a really nice spec. It's really fast-paced, especially with swords and spear. It's really cool. I think for me, it's an A-tier spec. Yeah, just from a design perspective. Yeah, I'm not talking about how the balance is here. I'm just talking about the design. Okay, let's talk now about Elementalist, and now we get to some really spicy takes. So for me, the first one, Weaver, is S tier. Weaver design is S tier because it's such a cool idea to having different elements woven in together and having new skills that are created out of this. I think this is amazing. I really like that. I think this is an amazing idea. Sadly, it doesn't work out in the balance right now, but that's another topic. I personally really enjoy it. I think I'm not a big fan when it comes to how they balance it, but I really like the idea of having multiple skills that are just interwoven with each other and work a lot together. I also like the stances. They are cool design. It's really cool. In general, Weaver, perfect Elementalist, Elite-Spec. I think the opposite is Catalyst. I'm not a big Catalyst fan. I think Catalyst is fun to play, yes, but I think Catalyst itself is actually not fun. What makes Catalyst fun is that it's currently really good. If Catalyst would be worse, just from the damage output and the sustain and stuff, it would not be fun anymore. So that's a clear decision to me that design is flawed. It's not a good design. So I would put it in C tier because I don't like playing an Elementalist and Core Elementalist that gets another button. I think that doesn't influence it like the Chronomancer button. The Chronomancer button changes everything how you play Chronomancer. But Elementalist just plays like a Core Elementalist, and every now and then you spam a new button. That's it. Not good. I don't like it. Then we have Tempest. I think Tempest is a really good elite spec. I think it's not as complicated as Weaver, but it still fits very well to Elementalist. You have the ability to overload your skills. It's really cool. That you can decide, okay, I need more healing. I go and overload my water attunement. I think this is really cool. Also, the shouts are really nice. I think this is a really good elite spec. I think for me also S tier. I think I really like Tempest. As a healer particularly, but also if you really want to go for DPS, I think this is also a good option with the Overload Air. I think it fits really well as well. Okay, so let's talk about Thief. So Thief, in my opinion, is the only elite spec or only class that has a little bit of a problem with the elite specs, how they are designed, because they are really close to the core Thief and just give it a little bit more of a new playstyle, but it doesn't change the core idea of being an assassin. Yeah, so it's still feeling like the same thing, which is not a bad thing, but limits it in how you play it. So that's why I would put Daredevil, for me, is not really interesting. I would put Daredevil for me in C tier as well. Yes, you get one more dodge, and it fits the name, but it's not like it's so much different from a core thief. Yeah, in my opinion, it's like you play a core thief which is stronger. So in my opinion, it's not like a really crazy good design. It's not changing the class too much. And the same sadly goes for Daredevil. Deadeye. I think Deadeye is the same. For me, Deadeye feels like it's a core thief that gets power crept. Yeah. If you would rate rival Deadeye only, then I would put it higher. Yeah. But for me, I would put it here because nowadays everyone can use rival on thief. So that's only C tier for me. It's not the role play. I get it fits. Yeah. Of those two, but for me, they don't change too much. The gameplay is almost the same as a core thief would use, just a little bit better. And the opposite is true for Spectre. I'm a big Spectre sim. I think Spectre is really cool. It changes Thief in a way I would never have imagined to work, because it makes Thief as a support viable. And it fits the class. It's not like it's completely random. I think it's really well made. The Shroud is amazing. And it just fits the class. So for me, Spectre is an S tier. I think Spectre is perfect for Thief-Spec as a support. I really like it. I really like it. It's really good. But of course, again, this is subjective. It can be completely swapped, this tier list, for everyone that wants to make their own. Be sure to use the link that I will put in the video here. But it's really important. Yeah, this is my tier list, my opinion on how fun and how good the design is, in my opinion. Okay, let's talk about Engineer next. So Engineer is easy for me. Engineer, Holosmith is an S tier. Holosmith S tier just because I think it fits Engineer perfectly well. It is perfectly as an Engineer spec, as it adds some nice flashy animations and some nice utility skills as well, without changing it too much to make it completely different from Engineer, but in a way unique that you say, okay, I want to play Holosmith and not core Engineer. I think that makes a lot of sense. So for me, Holosmith is a perfect example how you can make something new with one button in that sense, that you add the Holoforge that gives you a new transform, and that alters your gameplay so much that it's completely unique. I really like that. It's perfect done, especially with the overheat mechanic. I really like that as well. That's really cool. Then we have Mechanist. I think Mechanist, for me, is a really cool design from the traits. I don't really like to have an NAI running around with me, so I'm personally not a big Mechanist fan, but I see the design and why it's actually cool and why it's fun potentially. So that's why I put it in A tier, because I think it's a fun design to alter your mech, and I think it's really nice. I'm talking here about every single game mode, because for me, fun and design is not limited by a specific game mode. Yeah. So if I enjoy Viva, I typically enjoy Viva in every single game mode. And I think Heavenfire might have a correct point here, that the mech is not that customizable. Yes, it's true, but you can actually customize it quite a bit. Every single trait in the trait line changes the attacks of your mech. So I think this customizes actually quite well. Yeah. And I personally am not a big mech fan. I would say, yes, I would agree. If you are a core engineer fan, I would put mech lower. Maybe I will leave it at B because of that, because you lose so much identity of the core engineer with the tool belt skills and stuff. And Mechanist itself is just like you get a pet and you lose every identity that you had before. It's just the mech now. So it's really far away from core engineer in that sense. Yes, I would agree with that statement. Scrapper is the middle ground here, I would say. It loses a little bit, but you get the function gyro, you get the gyros. I think it's a really cool design. It's not like, it's completely like Holosmith, where I would say it's perfectly fun just from baseline kit, but it's really nice with the super speed access and just the utility. I like Scrap. I'm personally a Scrapper fan, but I would say it's not my favorite engineer spec, from the design perspective. Yeah. And then we have Ranger lastly left. I think Ranger is interesting. Yeah, I would put actually, so we have a question from YouTube. Mirage in S tier from a design perspective is really my personal take. You could put it in A tier. I would put it in low S tier or higher A tier, because I personally think Mirage is really cool. The idea to have your clones dodge when you dodge, I think this is really cool. To have attacks that you get when you use aggressively, I think it's really nice. Yeah. Personally, I think it's a really cool idea. But I think the design of it, if you adjust it in terms of balance, yeah, if you say you need to balance it and make it fair, then it's actually really horrible, because dodge alter racing specs are horrible to balance. So I would say if you have it, look at this thing, then typically A tier is actually the highest it can go. But I personally really enjoy the idea of having a Mirage, because it's really fitting to an Mesmer. Yeah. So the idea that you have to concentrate on your clones as well to make them dodge at the correct time, so that they survive an attack, feels like to me as an amazing addition to Mesmer. Yeah. So just this idea is amazing. But I get your point why you would put it lower. Yeah, for sure. And I also get your point here, Heavenfire, that you want to put gyros or Scrapper a little bit lower because of the gyros, because the gyros are not that exciting. I get it. But I think it's a fitting addition to an engineer. Yeah, engineer that has some kind of technical advancement, progression, and uses some kind of bots to help him. I think that makes sense. It fits very well to an engineer, in my opinion. And I think I would put it in A tier. I think it's very good, in my opinion. Okay, so I was talking about Ranger. I think Ranger is hard to rate in that sense, because if you're a Ranger fan, you typically like the pet. And then the Soul Beast might be lower because you will kill your pet with the Soul Beast. However, I personally would say Soul Beast is one of the best Ranger specs, because it's really, really cool how you can play with the pet, get your utilities off the pet, and then you can swap out again. And I think it's really cool. I really like the idea that you use the soul of your pet to merge into Soul Beast form, so to say. It's really cool. I really like that. I get if you're a pet enjoyer, you might not like it as much, but I personally really like it. And on the other hand, we have Druid. I think Druid adds not that much to Ranger. Yeah, the glyphs are cool. I like the dualism of having two forms of glyphs, depending if you're in Celestial Avatar form or not. But I personally don't really like the Celestial Avatar form. It fits Druid, or it fits some kind of healer, but I think it's not too exciting. The skills are not too crazy. They are power grab, they are really crazy good, but I think it's not good enough to make it really insane design tier for me. That is my personal taste. I know a lot of people like it, but I put it in A tier. I think I like the perspective of having a Ranger that comes close to nature as a healer. I think that makes a lot of sense. But when it comes to the design of the class, skills and stuff, I think there is improvement, room for improvement for sure. Yeah, that's just my take. And then we have Untamed. I personally think Untamed is really interesting with the ambush mechanics. I personally don't like how the pet and stuff, the utility skills is implemented. I'm not a big fan of it, but I think the idea of having special ambush skills like Mirage does for swapping your stances is really cool. It fits Ranger to some extent. I'm not completely sure about just the general direction. I think it feels really close to Core Ranger, just a power grab Core Ranger. So I would say it's for me B tier, because it doesn't feel too much different as a Core Ranger in a way that I would say it's good enough. I mean, Soul Beast in S tier is arguable to put it lower. It's like Mirage. I think Mirage and Soul Beast both could be A tier. I personally think I like the idea of having lost my pet. I'm not a big AI fan. I think that was clear after my mech stuff, and the same goes for Ranger. And if I want to play Ranger, I want to lose my pet. So that's why I put it that high. Because I am really happy that I can just merge with my pet and completely deny the stupid AI to run around. So that's why I put it in S tier. Because I think the idea of getting rid of a boring mechanic or stupid mechanic of your pet is good. But I can see why you would say the rotation and the stuff is really boring. You don't get too much offered from Soul Beast itself. I think the stances have a lot of potential though. So if you could play like a support Soul Beast where you can give your allies stability, you give your allies Condi cleanses and that kind of stuff, I think that would be really cool. I think they're not there yet, but if they balance it better, it would be amazing. So that's my take. I guess, yeah, I can totally see why you would put it lower because it's a boring spec to play from the rotation. Yeah, I get it. But in my Ranger mindset, I think it's the best Ranger spec when it comes to how much impact I have on my gameplay and how fun I think Ranger could be if I have this spec equipped. That's just my take. And I think that's what I would say is my tier list. Let me know if you have any comments on that. But I think that's my fun and design tier list, yeah. There are some adjustments that you could make. I did not put anything in D tier because I think every single Elite-Spec is actually really, really nicely done. It's not like it's completely garbage or something. And they are all fitting to their core classes. But some are better than others, in my opinion. How they are fitting, how fun they are from a design perspective. I hope you enjoyed this. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks to all my supporters on YouTube, Patreon, and Twitch. Thanks, Timor. Thanks, Malice. And I hope to see you all in the next video.